and you'll hear this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and good middle of the night to those of you joining us from across the world. My name is Susan Barber, and I am representing the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation's Community Education Programming. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the foundation or joining us for the first time, just a little bit of information about who we are. We are founded, it's a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're inspired by the life and the work of psychiatrist, humanitarian, and hospice pioneer, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The foundation was founded just a year after her death in 2005 by her son, Ken Ross, who still runs the foundation, and will be putting together a recording of today's event that will come out sometime next week when he returns from the Palliative Care Conference in Africa. Over the course of the last 17 years, the foundation chapters have been created on 4 continents, and they are continuing her mission to develop hospice, palliative care, and grief support for people around the world. Though she is the author of On Death and Dying, probably her most well-known book, and she is known as the 5 stages or the 5 stages of Death Lady, Elizabeth lived her life to the fullest, and her focus was always that people would engage in conversations about death, dying, loss, and grief in order to live their own lives as fully as possible. I want to just say thank you for those whoever asked for the transcription. We have that on now. And I'm going to bring Teepa down here with me. I'm going to add her to the spotlight. Teepa, thank you so much. I'm going to do a brief introduction. Teepa Snow is one of the leading educators on dementia. I myself have had the pleasure of seeing her live twice, working with people, which was remarkable, and also in this format a number of times. And she's developed a dementia care philosophy that reflects her education, work experience, medical research, and her firsthand experience caregiving. She's a graduate of Duke University and received her MS from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and also is the author of many books, several books. And we're going to highlight, I think today, Changing Brain, perhaps? Yes. So Teepa, I'm going to remove myself from this screen share, and I'm going to turn this over to you. Go Heels. That's it, Vicki. Go Heels. Thank you so much.
Wait a minute. We have to be careful. You know, there's 2 sides to every story at least, and we've got Go Duke, Go Heels, and then there's, you know, Green Bay and lots of other things. So I try to stay out of the middle of it. It's bound to end up in a conversation you don't want to be in. So. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So my background and expertise is in working with people whose brains are changing. And of course, when we're talking about death, dying, and loss and grief, I mean, people's brains are in different places than they might be otherwise. But this is the kind of brain change that happens when your brain starts changing in a way we can't, at this point, turn around in a predictable or formal way. So you're having brain changes that we call, in general, dementia. In other words, the brain cells that you count on and the ways you use your brain are changing on you. And you may be in a group that is very aware of it, or you might be in a group of people and it's about a 50-50 mix. I have no idea my brain is changing. I think my brain is working just fine. It's working as well as it ever has worked. So I may or may not be aware of my brain changes because I might actually start having brain changes a little. If you want to touch your forehead to sort of get a sense of where the change is that's causing my issue, it's in the prefrontal cortex, which is up in this part of your brain. And classic is going to be a little bit to the left of the middle. Okay, that's where we think this space is that allows us to really be alert and aware of our own abilities. And it allows us to look at ourselves and look at what we can do and make a judgment call. I'm good, I can handle this. Or, I'm not so good at this, I think I might need some help. And what happens when I'm developing these brain changes is some of us will be able to be aware these changes are happening. And God, I'm having trouble doing things I used to be able to do. It's like weird. I was always good at doing this, and I seem to be struggling. And then the other half will think, well, the reason I'm having trouble is because of you. You're the problem. I'm fine. So my reaction to my change is I may sound more angry and frustrated than I sound sad or confused, or aware. And that's a reality of living with this condition. And the tricky part is I can flip-flop. I can have awareness and then not have awareness. But the other side of the story is that those around me could have awareness of my changes or not have awareness of my changes and realize that they're due to something I can't control. And so it's very common for those around me to say, Teepa, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. You know better than that. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now, remember, we talked about that. No, wait, you can't. What are you doing with the car keys? No, don't stand up. Oh my gosh, what are you? You're going to fall. Do you want to fall? And without meaning to, we sound angry and we sound frustrated. And we're actually raising our voices and unfortunately yelling at someone who didn't realize what they were doing was risky or dangerous because they hadn't recognized the change in the loss. So what I'm going to do is take us through some possibilities of how to approach this a little differently. And to do that, I'm actually going to have us back up a little bit and think about, okay, we were looking at ourselves in the mirror. What do we know about this thing we call dementia? What are we aware of? Because if I'm going to partner and be in relationship with somebody whose brain is changing, I hope I have a handle on this. If I don't, I could be stepping in the mud and causing issues that I don't mean to cause. I'm trying to be helpful, but what I can actually cause is a lot of conflict. I can cause my own distress. I can cause them distress. I can cause people around us distress. I could not at all be satisfied with what's happening. And then I start grieving that I feel that this isn't working and this is ridiculous. I went into this, I'm a volunteer, come on. Or I'm a person that's going to help this individual and I don't know what to do. How am I supposed to help somebody else? I don't know what to do with them. And that's the often, I don't know what to do with them. But it's like they're an inanimate thing and I'm going to do something rather than, I'm not sure how to engage. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show a little video clip of me simulating someone living with this condition pretty far along in my condition. And I'm going to show Melanie, who's a gerontological nurse practitioner, trying to support me. And we're just going to take a look at it. I'm going to ask you guys what you're noticing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I hope to share my sound. I have to remember to do that, so that worked. And then I will share my, okay, now you should hopefully see me against the wall, Melanie at a desk, and you're going to watch what happens. Here we go.
Look up there. You got it? Oh, you got it. You got it. See that? And then looking. Looking up. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, little boy. Hey there. Hey, look at see? I see. Bye-bye. 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 Are we gonna go? We're gonna go. All right. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of things did you notice? What did you notice about me or about Melanie? What kind of things were sort of, yeah. Melanie managed to engage me. I was engaged with just moving around and seeking. I was in a seek mode. We call it seeking. I'm seeking something. And Melanie noticed I was seeking. And rather than interrupting, she came alongside and sort of was curious about what I was curious about. And she used something that's preserved in me. If I do this to somebody, hey, and I offer my hand, what I will frequently see, if the person notices me, they'll go, hey, back and offer their hand back. It's a spontaneous greeting behavior that we tend to have. And so I want my hand up close to my face. Hey. And then I very gently and slowly offer it out. And what will happen is the person shakes hands. And then what Melanie did is she continued to hold on, but she locked thumbs and then provided a platform for my hand so that she actually created a connection between the two of us. And her hand is under my hand. She's in support of me. But now she literally can support me, the whole of me. And she also can direct my attention. Now, I was really fascinated by the thing I found in the wall. How many of you think I really understood it was an electrical outlet and I probably shouldn't mess with it? Yeah, I know I see some heads moving the opposite. No, not real. But I'm curious about it. So what does that tell you about my interest in doing something with my eyes and my hands, even at this point in my life with very limited capacity? I'm really into what my eyes can see and what my hands can touch. And I'm trying to do things, but I'm not really effective. What Melanie is able to do is engage, and she starts to have a conversation with me. And she starts with where I'm at. So the phrase or the sounds that I can make, I get it. It's a rhythmic, repetitive framing. And I get it. And Melanie comes along and says, yeah, you want to get it. She interprets for me and supports me in that. And then she shows pleasure and joy. Yeah, ooh, we're gonna get it. Now that's called an interjection. Everybody out there try, ooh. And it is really hard when you hear an ooh to not pay attention to the ooh, because the ooh sort of draws us. It says, ooh, ooh, or wow. By using visuals plus sound production of something positive, it's called an interjection. I can interject into what the person was doing and then start to provide the support to transition them from something that could be risky or even dangerous, leaning over or trying to open an electrical outlet, is not particularly a healthy thing to do. But what started happening is Melanie got me engaged. And then I was looking up, and unfortunately, when I look upward, at this point in the condition, I become non-segmental. In other words, you and I can take our upper bodies and separate it from our lower bodies. So we can take our upper spines and our lower spines, we can rotate around them, we can turn our heads and our necks. We can isolate particular movements of our spine and our body by segments. At this point, Teepa's just working on getting from place to place as a whole piece. So she can move her feet, but when she moves her feet, she actually rocks a little bit from side to side because it's a whole body movement. And she moves all at once. So when she brings her head up, if Melanie weren't there, what do you think might happen? Timber. She'll go on over. And so one of the realities is as I move into this later state, my risk of falls and fall-related injuries, because the other thing I won't have is if we start to fall backwards and we have capacity, we'll throw ourselves up and out and forward to try to prevent the fall. It's called protective extension. And the problem with somebody at this point in dementia is they've lost that capacity. So when they start to go, they just go. And your heels are challenging because there's nothing back there. Once you get to your heels, you're all out of luck. If your weight goes too far back, whoa. My one possibility would be if Melanie were in front of me, I'd grab for her. I might grab because that's an old primitive thing. That might grab and hold on. Now, how might Melanie interpret that? I'll let eyes get really big. It's like, oh my gosh, Teepa's grabbing me. Ow, no, Teepa. Because you think Teepa's going to be real super careful about the grab and what body parts she grabs hold of and how tight she holds on. And then she thinks Melanie's trying to do something, so maybe she pushes back on Melanie. And so this can really escalate into what we call a confrontation, but it didn't. It didn't at all, because Melanie had hand under hand, and she actually got a second hand under hand. And she was able to actually anticipate Teepa. If she looks up, if you know Teepa's gonna come back, Melanie was ready. She's a little to the side and diagonal. So I'm gonna pause, because what I'm trying to get at is, I think Melanie needs some skill. And I think we ask people to do things without training and skill, and then we're surprised when it doesn't go well. And we tend to blame the dementia, and we blame Teepa's dementia and Teepa with her dementia, and she's difficult, she's hard, instead of, wow, she's living with a really challenging condition. But with the right support and the right care, you know, it can go okay. I mean, that interaction, they were having some fun. They smiled, they laughed, they moved together. And eventually, what were they going to do at the end? This speaks to Melanie's knowledge of Teepa, by the way. Go get something nice and hot to drink. So it could be decaf. Teepa's not looking for caffeine. Teepa's maybe not even looking for fluids to put in. So this is Melanie's awareness of Teepa and what she likes. That will allow her to help Teepa move. And then when she does this position, she can also help Teepa sit in a safe way without her using a lot of strength. It's not about strength, it's about skill. And so then figuring out how to help Teepa recognize what she's going to do is take a drink of something. Because if Teepa misunderstands electrical outlets, there's a strong possibility Teepa would take a cup and pour it out just to look and see what, and find it fascinating. But those around me may not find it nearly as interesting as I did to have to clean up. And yet they handed me the cup and thought I would recognize what to do with it, and I did. When you have something in a cup, you can pour it out. Isn't that interesting? And I can almost guarantee most people wouldn't go, yeah. They would go, oh, Teepa, no. Oh, God, Teepa. And what we didn't recognize is Teepa has lost the ability to understand objects for use. We sort of already had the information, but we didn't apply the information to the next situation. So I'm going to pause, because I just threw a whole lot at you. And that comes from about 42 years of professional work and working within my family with 4 different family members, all of which had different types and forms of dementia, and supporting and caring for them until they died. So I learned a lot, both from family experiences, but a huge amount from friends and individuals that I've worked with over the years in a variety of settings. And what I truly believe is humans are amazing. And when we can really get curious about them and be interested in figuring out how to be supportive of them, we can have some amazing life experiences that can change us and support our own life in a positive way, rather than one that we view as detrimental or overwhelming, or I don't know if I can make it through this, if I have to do one more day. Wow, that's a hard way to be approaching this thing that we call living. And we see a lot of families and a lot of care providers in this situation because they haven't figured out how to find moments of joy in this mix of providing support and care, and things are overwhelming to them, mostly because of lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, and lack of skill, which is pretty common because we don't spend energy helping people understand the brain changes that come with dementia. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, only this time I'm going to give you a little quiz. Don't freak out. It won't be, you don't get credit or points or anything. I'm not being mean. You don't have to share anything if you don't want to. What I'm really looking at, what do we know? What do we think we know? What don't we know? What surprises us? And what can we do about it? So here's my very first question. And for many people, this is an interesting question. For others are like, oh, no, this is easy. Dementia and Alzheimer's are 2 different words for the same condition. True, false, or I don't know. And you can pick any of those and you don't have to tell me your answer. Because here's the next thing I'm going to ask you. Now I'm going to give you these words: dementia, Alzheimer's, and memory problems. And I'm going to have a red circle between each. And I want you to put a math symbol in there. Anything from math that you think fits in there. So some examples: plus, minus, greater than, equal to, not equal to, multiply, divide. So if you were going to put a math symbol between each of these words, what math symbol would you put? Think about what symbols you would put in each of those circles. Okay. And now I'm going to show you something. About 90 to 95% of the general public think dementia is about equal to Alzheimer's, is equivalent to Alzheimer's. It's the same thing essentially. And it means people have memory problems. Now, was the majority of what you saw going on with Teepa, do you think that was just a memory problem? No. And do we know whether what Teepa had was Alzheimer's or not? Now, here's the better answer. Having dementia can be more than just having Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a lot in and of itself, but it's a lot more than just having memory problems. So yes, when you have Alzheimer's, you will have memory problems, and you do have a form of dementia, but actually, there's more to dementia than that, and there's more to Alzheimer's than just memory problems. So here's another question, and this is a newer question. What do you know about LATE dementia, otherwise known as late dementia? It's new, it's a newer one. Did you know that it affects about 15 to 20% of all people living with dementia? So it's actually it's a pretty common dementia. Did you know that it has only recently been identified as having symptoms similar to but different than Alzheimer's? So it's not Alzheimer's, but it looks a lot like Alzheimer's. Did you know that it's related to an abnormal protein formation called TDP-43, which is what we see more commonly with a frontal temporal type dementia? And it's forming huge amounts of abnormal protein. Did you know it's the most common dementia for people who are over the age of 80 to develop? It's more common, much more common than Alzheimer's. And did you know it was called limbic predominant age-related TDP-43 encephalopathy, which is why we call it late. Now, I put all that out there because we only discovered this dementia approximately 2 to 3 years ago. But it turns out for people who had absolutely no symptoms of dementia up until about 80, 85, later in life, they might very well not have Alzheimer's. It turns out they didn't have Alzheimer's. They had this type of dementia. And what it means is, rather than just having the symptoms of Alzheimer's, which is emotional regulation issues, learning and memory issues, word and their meaning issues, keeping and manipulating information issues, and speed of intake and shifts and attention issues, they have more episodic memory issues. They can't remember episodes of their life. They misremember or make up episodes that are inaccurate. They're having a lot more trouble finding the things, when you say things, whatchamacallits, what are those called? Son of a gun. I know this, I just can't think of it. So I can't find simple words. I mean, words, simple words. I know the word. I mean, the thing you eat with, it's a utensil with tines. So I can come up with the word utensil with tines. What can I find? Yeah, fork. Yikes. And I also have trouble with working memory. Now, when I have trouble with working memory, it means I'm in the middle of doing something and I can't, God, what was I doing? I don't know whether I was getting up out of bed, putting on my clothes, taking off my pajamas, or whether I was getting in bed, taking off my clothes and putting on my pajamas. I get in the middle of a task and then I have no idea what the heck was I doing. and I stand there lost. And then I have to pick, what am I going to do? And so I get back in the bed. Now, how does it look to you from the outside? Oh my gosh, she got right back in bed. She got up and she got back. Why did she do that? I mean, this is so frustrating. But what I saw was the bed and the PJs, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I have no idea what I've done up to now. So this is where I get the pills out, I get the water out. So when we talk about hospice and palliative care, one of the tricky parts with dementia is I could be in hospice or on palliative care support very early in my dementia or very late in my dementia, because dementia may not be the reason I'm being seen, but it will still impact how our relationship forms and how my life happens and how you're able to support me. So knowing about dementia from beginning to end really gets to be important. So I'm going to show you a great big umbrella, because this is the relationship. Dementia is a great big umbrella term. And under that umbrella, we have all kinds of dementias. Current estimates over 120 forms, causes, and types, 120. Some of them are grouped, like Alzheimer's disease, there's a variety of those. Frontal temporal dementias, there's a variety of those. Lewy body disease, relatively newer. It used to be almost always thought to be Parkinson's with Lewy body, but it's now we recognize Lewy body as the category and Parkinson's is one. Vascular dementias, and then a whole bunch of others. And what do you notice up there above the umbrella? Because we're not sure what to do with it yet. The phrase long haul COVID. We know that there are a number of people who had that long process of COVID. They got COVID. We're starting to notice brain fog that doesn't resolve. We're noticing inability to follow through on things that they used to be able to find easy to do. So we're finding that there are a number of people, both old and young, who are experiencing some brain changes. And we are still not sure, will it develop into a dementia or will it stabilize? And we don't know now. But what we do know is many of those people are more vulnerable to other illnesses. Many have already had concurrent illnesses. They had COPD and they had congestive heart failure and they had diabetes before this all happened. So that made them highly vulnerable to COVID. And so what we might be seeing is increase in numbers due to this adding into the mix. And we already know that dementia is well on the rise. So, what do you know about COVID? Well, males have different symptoms than females. And brain fog is the second most common symptom among women, with fatigue being number one. We have evidence that for some people, they won't get better. And we have that older people are at the greatest risk for permanent health change. So when we talk about needing support, some of these folks might need more support than anybody is thinking, but our problem is we don't have a lot of baseline of people's cognitive. We didn't know what their abilities were before. So we don't know how much they've changed, and we won't know for a while yet. And I just bring it up because I think this may be a group that starts to be concerned and might start to see some changes, and you might actually be working with, and this wasn't a group we ever had before. So it's a totally different group, just like late is a relatively new phenomenon. So what we do know is that there are things that are true about dementia. Parts of your brain are dying, it's progressive, it's not curable, it's chronic, and eventually it will result in death. We know those things about dementia. It's nothing, at this point, once you're on this journey, once you've had the cascade of events that makes it turn into dementia, there's not really a reliable way to get it to stop or halt. You may have pauses, you may have plateaus, but things are going to move forward. So in this PowerPoint, if you're interested later, you can look over and see what some of the different symptoms are. I'm going to give you just a quick role play to see if you can figure out what type of dementia you think I might have just in a very simple interaction. So Susan, I'm going to ask you to just respond to me if you would. Hey, do you see that little boy out there? The little boy hanging there on the tree. You see him?
A little boy on a tree.
Yes, the little boy. I'm afraid he's gonna fall. We should call the police.
Oh, let me look up Yeah, I think we're okay.
No, and wait, I know you. You're the one that had sex with my husband. You are a predator, and I know about you. You can't fool me. You think I'm stupid. I am not. I have watched what you've been doing. I'll pause.
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't think you're stupid, and I think you might be confusing me with your other neighbor.
Bullshit. That's ridiculous. So I'll
Um,
pause.
Well, let's get back to that little boy. How's he doing out there?
Yeah. So what I just demonstrated were a couple of things. What if you just look very briefly, does anybody have an idea of what kind of dementia I might be demonstrating? And it can happen that fast. It's the second column called Lewy body.
Oh.
And it has visual hallucinations, almost always involving animals, children, or people. Delusional thinking, usually some kind of negative thinking, like sex or harm or robbery or stealing or bad behavior. I can also have what we call Kubler-Ross syndrome, where I think you're the bad person, not the good version of yourself. So I see you, but you're not the real you, you're an imposter. And I can have lots of falls that when people work it up, there's no reason they can't find anything. And my behavior, it comes and it goes. It's worse in the evening and night than it is during the day. And I see things and then I don't. I may not be able to sleep much at all. I may be up at all hours of the night and become really anxious and try to find exits and try to get out of here and escape. And then during the day, I nap or take breaks, or I may not sleep for 5 days in a row. I can have really severe and extreme reactions to meds. So now, in my description of all that, how many of you automatically were thinking, oh yeah, dementia? Or how many of you were thinking, no, that sounds like psychiatric. That sounds like schizophrenia or something. That sounds really psychiatric in nature. And it's like, that's the problem, is that many of my changes are in the cortex of my brain and deep inside my brain. And it's that combination that tricks people. Because if you're looking for Alzheimer's type dementia, this one doesn't look at all like it. And yet I'm at very high risk for severe falls with head injuries, trauma. I can have fractures. Of all the people who fall, people with Lewy body are number one by about 40%. So if we're with someone who has Lewy body, being very present and very aware is going to be really important, because otherwise we get panicky because they may get up and try to move and not realize the risk they generate. And when I see something or think something, I can move quickly and not think of my risk. Some of the falls are just sit down falls, and some fall like timber and end up with lots of problems. So I just wanted to demonstrate Lewy body because it can be really surprising and shocking and feel not at all like a dementia. And if you're paired with me and no one has mentioned the possibility of me having Lewy body, we used to think about 10 years ago, it was only about 2% of the population. And now we realize it's well over 30% of everybody with dementia has some Lewy body involvement. And you can have more than one dementia. And by the time we're 75, it's more common to have 2 or more dementias than have a single dementia. So I'm going to pause and give you a chance to think for a second. Of things that I've said, has anything sort of for you gotten you think about your role and your responsibility and how you're trying to engage with people? Is anything sort of for you going, oh, okay, well, that's making me think about things? Or is everything, yeah, I knew that already? What you thinking out there? Just sort of let me know with your with the chat, if you could, if any of that is something that seems to be valuable for you. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. So let's move forward, because we can spend some more time. Now, look at this. This is interesting. Now I'm going to check in here because I know I have some older people and maybe some younger folks in here, folks from different nations. Just looking at the words, does this ring and resonate a bell with anybody? Now I'm going to give it some rhythm. And what I'm using is my right temporal lobe. And I gave you the left temporal lobe first. So take your right hand and touch your right temple, and then take your left and touch your left. Right and then left. And what I'm going to tell you is with all forms of dementia, you will lose abilities on your left, which involve language. You will keep abilities or retain them on your right, which involve rhythm-related language abilities. So what people are going to keep are rhythm-related, but what they're going to lose are skills in vocabulary, comprehension, and speech production. I'm going to lose my vocabulary words, my comprehension of what people say to me, and my ability to produce language. But I'm going to keep rhythm-related abilities, which will be forbidden words plus social chit-chat words. Well, I never, isn't that something? Hey, sweetheart, how are you? I can chit-chat and I can swear. Because those are different words. Those are used to connect and they're used to repel. So they're sort of more primitive and get out, no, don't you go to hell. In other words, when I use those words, I'm warning you away from me. Or when I go, oh, hey, sweetheart, yeah, oh, you're so pretty. Those kind of words are gonna draw you in to connect. So it's a heads up for you. I may not have a lot of language, but I may still attempt to connect with you or repel you if I feel threatened by you. The second ability is turn taking. People take turns. We learn it as really small infants. We say something, mama says something back. So this turn taking, so taking turns, it can also though end up in an argument. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, yes, no, yeah, no, yeah. And we end up arguing with somebody without meaning to, because it's an automatic back and forth. The third thing that tends to be preserved is the rhythm of speech, so that people can notice a question, but they don't know what you asked. They can also notice a change in frequency, intensity, or volume, or they can deliver it, which indicates an intensity. Whoa, hey, no, you don't, or, oh, yeah. And so I can give you a lot of data, but I'm not using my formal language skills. And the really cool part about almost every dementia that we know about is people retain some things we learned with rhythm will be the best retained. And so it tends to be music, poetry, prayer, or counting. People keep music, something related to music, something related to poetry or rhyming, something related to prayer, familiar prayers, and counting. So I can go 1, 2, 3, and I signal up and people will go 1, 2, 3, and they'll start to do the movement on 3 because that's what we do. So I'm using sort of an automatic rhythmic thing. And then the last thing is automatic rhythmic movement. So clapping in rhythm, humming, rocking, swaying, humming. This whole idea of I can get people to do things with me when I use these retained abilities on the right. So what I've given you here is a familiar song for me from my childhood. And it was from my mom's childhood. That's where it came from. And it was also something I did in Girl Scouts. So not only is it a song, there's a rhythm piece that goes with it. And it goes like this. I'll just go ahead and give it to you. Hey, Ray, playmate, come out and play with me and bring your dollies 3, climb up my apple tree, call down my rain barrel, slide down my cellar door, and we'll be jolly friends forevermore. Now, did many of you recognize that when I did it? Yeah. Many. Do you remember that you would do with a friend where the two girls would all do this stuff, more of a girl thing than a guy thing, and maybe more in the US than other countries. But what we all have are musical histories. And those musical histories come from childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood. And they are powerhouses. They bring emotions up and out. They connect us. They give us a sense of relationship. And so when I started that, many of you were going, oh yeah, I remember that. Right at first, it was like, oh yeah. And then we latched onto it. So this is this idea of coming into relationship with somebody with something that gives pleasure. That's something that might offer a connection. And so Melanie did a little music with me when I was moving, a little rhythm to see if she could get me connected. And then I was really busy. So she didn't keep pushing it, but she did offer it. So this is that, how do we make a connection when somebody doesn't have language, when somebody doesn't have a lot of ability? And the answer is, you might try offering something. Now, it doesn't have to be real loud and in your face, but it could be da 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 da, or it could be something simpler. Do 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 do, or it could be. How many of you want to go? Because it's shaving a haircut. 2 bits. Yeah. So what I would say is that we know some things about dementia, but I think if we change how we frame it, it could make a difference. Things don't work the way they used to. My abilities are changing. I have a new normal and I don't get to go back to how it used to be. It's not going to stabilize, and yet you can help me deal with the changes if you offer flexible support. And getting support that works is really essential for both of us as we continue to have more and more change. So if that's the case, then what we want to know is, what is dementia going to cause and what are we going to do about it? So I'm going to show you some. So put your hand on the front of your brain. That's that part where I said you might have some damage in your ability to be aware of yourself. And what we've done is we've sliced it off and we're looking at the inside of the front of your brain. Not yours, I mean, you're using yours. This is someone who has passed away, they died, and their family donated, they donated, and their families donated the brain. And what you're seeing is what's on the inside of the front of your brain. And this is called the executive control center, thinking center of your brain. And you see 2 major kinds of tissue. You see a lot of white matter, which is the wiring that gets info in and sends info out. So it's the wiring that connects the parts of your brain and the sides of your brain. And then you see the dark stuff around the outside. That's called the storage units. That's the gray matter. Those are the file cabinets you put things in. So you have storage, and then you have wiring that allows transmission. And the front of your brain is really important. And you have lots of things that are there. Impulse control, being logical and reasonable, making choices that are consistent with values, being able to initiate and sequence and finish something and then move on to something else where you can initiate and sequence. And it's what allows you to do all that and allow you to be self-aware and allow you to see other people's points of view. Now, the front part of your brain can't take in data from the outside world. It has to get its data from the other parts of your brain. So that wiring is essential, and it's the most highly wired section of the human brain, of a mature adult's brain, actually. So let's take a look. What do you notice in the bottom picture compared to the top picture? What's really evident in that bottom picture? Yeah, the wiring has been massively eliminated. So most dementias rob you of your wiring, and it makes it fritzy, and then it just eliminates it. What you're also seeing is a general shrinking. So that part of your brain literally shrivels and shrinks, and it's dying. Now, the other thing that you might notice is these holes are huge because your brain is dying from the inside as well as the outside. This little place, I'm going to see if I can point it to you. That's how much of your ventricle we used to be able to see, which is the opening inside your brain that allows you to have fluid in your brain that cleans your brain. This is now the size of the ventricles inside your skull and inside your brain. That's how big they are. And they didn't used to be that big. So given that, what do we think might be the case about impulse control, being logical, making choices, being able to start, sequence, complete, move on, being self-aware, and being able to see other people's points of view? Which of the brains can do that? And which of the brains is trying its very best to access and use data, but is really struggling to get anything in and get anything out? So how long might it take somebody to try to process something you ask them? So for instance, water or coffee? Now, what I'm going to do is take away the screen for a second so you can see me better. Okay. Coffee or water? It can take up to 6 to 30 seconds for the visual information to enter the occipital lobe, for the auditory information to come in through the temporal lobe, for those two pieces of data to send it to the front of the brain, for the brain to think about it, and then check in with the sensory motor area of the brain to say, I'd like something hot, I think. What's hot? Water or coffee? Coffee. All right. I'd like cocoa. Because when I went to find the word coffee, what happened? A miswiring. And so I said, or I might say I want coconut. And what's our automatic reaction when we've offered them coffee or water and they say, I want coconut? You see my face? That's our reaction. What? That's not even what I asked you. No, Teepa, coffee, and without thinking, we'll lean in, we'll enunciate, and we'll get louder. No, Teepa, and we say, no, you're wrong. So we're going to start an argument. Coffee or water? Now, did they show any evidence of having deafness or having a hard of hearing issue? No, they were having hard of comprehension. They were very slow, and yet they tried. So what we're going to work on is when the person comes back, if they come back with, I'll take the coconut, you're going to go, huh, wow, coconut. This coconut or this one? And now I'm looking for eye gaze. Now I'm looking for, did that help? Or are they truly thinking they want coconut water? It's a possibility, but that's a more far-fetched possibility than that they misspoke the word that their brain went to go find. And I might stick with what we're showing and I say, here we go. Tell you what, let's try this and see if you like it. Here you go. Try a drink. Now, what do you notice I'm doing? I got rid of the other object. I moved to the side. I present this. How about if we try this? Didn't say you have to, didn't say you needed to. How about if we try this? And I offer it out and I show the motion of what to do with it. And then I present it and see if the person follows through on it. And if they taste it and go, oh, that's good. Oh no, I was cool. It was just a word miss. If they taste it and they go, well, that's not coconut. Then I go, you're absolutely right. I am so sorry. Let me see if I can't get us some coconut water or something else. Because now I don't know for sure, are they talking about something else to drink, or even though I was offering something to drink, that they want something to eat. Gets complicated, but you saw the state of the brain, so it's not like they're doing it on purpose. But what I would say is keeping my brain working and keeping my brain curious and being willing to be flexible. That's really essential at this moment. And the tricky part for most of us is nobody preps us for this. Nobody gave us those techniques. Nobody showed us how you could use a visual plus a verbal cue and pause and wait. Nobody showed how you can use another cue to see and use the word try. Ooh, could you help me for a second? As opposed to let me help you, which means you're disabled and I'm going to do something. So there's many, many things that we could do and we should be thinking about doing. Our tricky part is making sure that we give ourselves a chance to learn more about how to do that, because often, unfortunately, that's not exactly what happens. We're so committed that, well, I did the best I could. She just was not really responsive. And instead, really recognizing, wow, maybe we need to modify a little bit more of what we're doing. So I'm going to show you a lady, Teepa, again, and we're going to watch an interaction that was similar. And we're going to sort of see what happens this time. I'm going to set us up to watch. And this time we have a young man working with her. So let's see what happens. And see if you notice some skills here that he's developing. Some struggle that he has. Here we go.
Knock, knock. Yeah.
So to connect, what did he do? He copied her. Rather than he gave her knock, knock, hey, and nothing happened. He noticed her clapping, so he started clapping with her rhythm and then got right where he could think she might notice him. And they started to make a connection. It was a visual and a rhythmic connection, and now it's a positive connection.
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
How are you? You good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Teepa.
Teepa? Yeah. Teepa.
Teepa, yeah.
Teepa.
Okay, so what you just heard there is it took her that long to recognize her own name and go, oh, yeah, that's me. It was actually having to go and look in the cabinet and go, oh yeah, Teepa, that's me. Now, notice how Matthew, again, in this situation, has hand under hand. He has Teepa's hand with his hand, but again, no fingers being grasped or pinched or squeezed. What's happening is Matthew is doing thumb to thumb, palm up, Teepa palm down, so that he can cue her with a gentle pump, but he can also show her because he's turned sideways to her. He is not right in front of her. She is able to see him by positioning herself, but Matthew is not blocking her in. He's not trapping her. He's down on her level, and he's going to show her something.
Teepa.
Drink.
Yeah, the drink.
You?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh boy, well, that's not what he thought was going to happen. So he thought she was going to get the drink idea. And they had done drink, she said drink, but what happened was she saw something further out. And without realizing, boy, that may not be a safe reach, she is reaching for the thing she is interested in. And Matthew fortunately has that hand support. So when she leans out like that, she's not going to fall because he has that hand in support and he's watching.
Look at that.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't
I
it?
like
I
that.
like that, isn't that?
Yeah.
Teepa,
Yeah.
could I see that?
Do?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah, they got
Yeah.
it. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Did you see that?
Yeah, see it.
Yeah. Got that.
Yeah, all of that.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you notice Teepa seems to enjoy? When she sees something, if she likes it, she's going to touch it. She is a toucher. She likes to use her hands to explore the world. She uses her eyes to sight it, and then she uses her hands to connect with it. And when she seeks with her hands. And one of the reasons she's going to seek more with her hands is by now her vision is monocular. She really can't integrate the two visual images into what we call a binocular stereoscopic vision. She doesn't have any depth perception. So when she notices something, she reaches out with her hand and strokes it to figure out where it is and what it is. Is it 3D? Is it 2D? What does it feel like? What can I do with it? So she's going to be doing a lot of touching. So what do you have to prepare yourself for? You're going to be an interesting contact. Yeah, so what she's going to do is reach out and touch a lot. Especially if you wear something that has something across the front, or if you wear something that dangles, or you wear something that draws her eye. So she's interested in textures and surfaces, and she wasn't unwilling to give things up. She just is very engaged with stuff. Now she likes people okay, but she was really enjoying her hands here, and she was enjoying the rhythm. And she likes Matthew, but she sort of likes touching a lot.
Teepa.
I like that. That's
Teepa. Yeah.
Oh,
Here, something to
you
drink.
got that?
Yeah. Drink.
Oh.
Mm.
Huh?
Drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does she still have a clue what he's trying to do? He's trying to help her drink something. Is it? She still figured it out? No, but does she like Matthew? Yeah. Is she finding pleasure in being with Matthew? Is she finding pleasure in the moment? Is Matthew finding pleasure? Yeah, but he's got to watch himself because he can get a little frustrated because, he wants to get her hydrated. Because our mind really has a hard time letting go of those needs that you have to stay alive. And right now, what's Teepa's primary need? To find pleasure. She's finding pleasure. Thirst? She's not thirsty. That's why she's not seeking something to drink. She's not really thirsty. She doesn't know she's thirsty. She may turn out to be thirsty, but it's not registering. What she's really enjoying is what she sees and what she can touch. And so Matthew making himself available to her is going to help him get to where he wants to go, which is see if he can get her to drink something.
You got that.
Yeah.
I like you. You're funny.
I like you too, Teepa. Now you. Yeah.
Oh.
You got it? Yeah. Woo.
That's all.
Yeah, that's all. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to pause there because one of the challenges we have is how are we going to spend time with Teepa? I think Matthew had a good idea. Go with the flow, find some music, maybe dance with her. She's the kind of lady that might be willing to dance. Now you got to be careful because the Lord knows where she'd go. But the thing is that it's not for her about hydration and nourishment. It's about engagement. So bringing things that are bright and colorful and allowing her to handle those and mess with those. For us, it's just messing with those. For her, it's an exploration of wonder and excitement. But we also have to recognize when she's changing, because this isn't the final state of dementia. It looks a little different. But what we do know is that how we go about making a difference for people really can make a difference. Now, the PowerPoint has a lot more in it and a lot more with it, because frankly, boy, we could spend hours and hours learning about this. I'm hoping, however, that I've got you to sort of think about people a little differently. And if I could leave you with one final thought, it's if we saw people living with the brain changes of dementia as precious gems, and with the right setting and the right care, they shine, I think we have a better way of approaching this relationship. because with the right support and with the right care, people can show us everything they can be in that moment. And it isn't how it used to be, but I got to let go of what used to be to celebrate the possibility of now, because that's what we have is now. We don't have the past, and I don't know about the future, but maybe we can find some moments in now where we feel good about one another and what we're able to do together. So I'll pause there and see if you guys have some questions.
Teepa, thank you so much. There have been a number of questions that people posted up in the chat. So I'm going to go through those with you if you're okay with that. And then for people who would like to ask a question, the easiest way for me to track that is if you go to the bottom of your screen, you may see a smiley face icon that says reactions. If you click there, it will show me in a list of people the order in which you've raised your hand. And if you do not see it there, let me know in the chat and we'll figure out. It could be under a tab called More, and halfway, more than 2/3 of the way down, that drop-down menu will say reactions. If you click on that, there'll be a place for you to raise your hand. So I'm going to go through the questions here, Teepa. They began pretty quickly, actually. So at Christina's asking, can the techniques you're using apply to the non-geriatric population? And this was early on, right after the birth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no magic about age when it comes to dementia. What we do want to be thoughtful about is younger individuals who might have greater strength and muscle capacity because they haven't diminished in their muscle strength early on. We've got to be more tuned in to them being quicker and stronger. And so therefore, I definitely want to work on my skills ahead of time. We also know that younger people might be more responsive to certain interaction skills, but they might pick up more on where I position myself, and when I'm touching them, they might do touching. And again, depending on your comfort level, it could proceed in a way that surprises you. So it's just really getting yourself comfortable with, whoa, that was a surprise, and go, whoa, hey, and getting that hand and managing that hand and moving really to the side. So I present the shoulder and I present my body, but I'm not presenting my chest. And sometimes that can make a difference. And if I'm down, I'm not presenting my back end, which can also cause some interesting touching behaviors of interest to people because it's right there and it's within reach. And so it's helping us really tune into what they're interested in if I present something, and can I redirect that if I'm thoughtful and careful about how I do that. Yeah, but it can apply. I use it everywhere, including teenagers and younger people and my grandkids. They tend to respond fairly well to it as well.
Yeah, somebody had asked who works with autistic teenagers if some of these behaviors, like these ways of engaging and interacting, could be useful.
Yeah, it turns out that for people with autism, frequently for those individuals, the lack of brain development or abnormal brain development are in the same areas where dementia takes hold and causes havoc for people who've had a normally developed brain and are losing it. So it turns out it's similar types, similar areas of the brain and similar dysfunctions, but the causes are very different and the history is very different. So people with autism frequently have some self-stimming behaviors that they may have managed, but they may be starting back again. And that could be a signal that not only do they have autism, but they're starting to develop some additional changes in their brain that might be a dementia. Or it could just be with autism, it's a very helpful thing to go, hey, and see if they'll offer their hand. Because if they won't touch me, it's highly unlikely they're going to want to literally engage. And if I do something like this, I may end up with a whole body contact. So really offering my hand and see what they do with it. If they're really curious about it and messing with it, it signals they don't see it as a interaction. They see it as something to be curious and wanting to mess with, which is fine. It tells me a lot in my dynamic assessment.
Somebody had asked about your use of hands as sign language or just Is that an easy, did you learn that? Did you develop these sort of techniques specifically for this, or were you trained in sign language?
Well, that's really interesting. When I was a teenager was when they closed down the state developmental disability centers and sent all the kids back home to their families that had, and it was like, what? No. And so there was a college kid that started a program, and he recruited all of us high schoolers or junior hires to work with him with the kids that were coming home with Down syndrome, with cerebral palsy, with autism, because they thought mothers caused autism because they were cold and unfeeling. And so they took the children away and put them in institutions thinking they could do better. And that's when they discovered, well, that actually is not at all what causes autism. So when the kids were coming out, I was really involved as a volunteer, as a young kid, working with kids with autism and other developmental disabilities. And so I actually did learn a lot of sign language. And I actually took courses in sign language. I used my hands and my voice a lot in my face to help people focus their attention. And what I find is it's very valuable, because when I present myself with the object and I'm focused on and then I look at the object, you guys are much more likely to look at the object than look at me. When I put it here and I say, so do you want some peanut butter? It makes it sort of awkward. Whereas if I present it where I'm in side profile, I turn my face and I give you this, it's a nice clean image. And I want to look beyond to see what's behind that person's view so that they have a nice clean palette to look on. Because we can get real cluttered in our worlds. And it turns out, yeah, I use a lot of what I learned in developmental disabilities work when I moved into head injury, and I moved into stroke work, and then I moved into dementia over time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So there's a couple of questions that were presented around the time you were talking about late, LATE dementia. One was a question about, is there any medication to offset the abnormal proteins that are being found?
Good question. We are not there yet. This is so new that people thought for sure everything that happened after age 70, 75, 80 was all Alzheimer's. I mean, we were all convinced it was just like Alzheimer's. That's all Alzheimer's, but some of them have behavioral disturbance. So they have Alzheimer's with behavioral disturbances. And it's like, actually, and language problems, or they have hallucinations. And it's like, actually, it's a different kind of dementia. And it was only the work that came out of England and not pausing and saying, wait, this is a different protein, I think, that got us to this place. So we're at the very beginning of looking at this differently and going, oh, so not beta amyloid plaque formations and not tau pathologies. This is a different protein. And it's not synuclein because that's Lewy body. It's something else. Wow. We got to learn a lot, because we don't have the answer yet. What we do know is it's abnormal proteins. So proteins are important in our diet, but we've been mucking around for a while.
Thank you. So this is also related to late dementia. I love this question because it so mirrored my own. Those late dementia signs are things that many of us can relate to in midlife. Word loss. What did I come in the room for? Where's my keys? So is the differentiator simply in the frequency with which they occur? And another question just after that was about how is late dementia diagnosed? So they kind of go together, I think.
Yeah, they do. So, so let's say, I'll give you an example. Like, I can't find my car keys, and I've looked everywhere for my friggin' car keys, and I know I had them in my hand. I went to the grocery store. I came in, I put groceries away. And I turned to my husband and say, did you do something with my car keys? And he goes, no, I didn't have your car keys. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about? Well, I had them, but now I can't find them. And what we'll do classically is we trace our steps. We try to recall the sequence. Now, if I open the freezer, because I put ice cream in the freezer, and I find my car keys sitting there, if I am just forgetful and somewhat overwhelmed, and I was trying to do too many things in a sequence, and I stopped and I started too many times, that's normal aging. I would say, oh crap, that's right. I laid them down to get the frozen peas out because I wasn't, I needed to, there was not enough room. If I turn to my husband instead and say, see, this is what I told you. You're trying to keep me from driving, aren't you? Well, you hide him in the freezer. I'll find him and I'll still drive. You are not the boss of me. Because what just happened to logic and emotion? So in that moment, my brain saw this as a threat and an attack. And it shouldn't have been, it should have been a cha-ching. Oh yeah, now I remember. We almost always, when we get the word, we go, man, couldn't I think of that word? We don't go, well, that's not the right word. What word are you, yeah, fork. Well, yes, fork. I mean, of course I was thinking of fork. So we look at sort of our reaction to it and recognize, am I going, Anne, I think I'm not getting as much sleep as I should. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I'm somewhat distracted because I'm worried about X. And we start thinking about what could be causing this. Now, if it's happening a good bit, it is time to pause probably and go, okay, this is getting to be way too common. I may need to look at my lifestyle and what I'm doing and make sure that I'm taking care of myself. Because I know a lot of you on this call, you care about people, but you forget to look in the mirror and see how you're doing every now and then. And then suddenly it catches up with you. Sort of like, if I get a cold sore, I know it means I'm not taking care of myself. So it's time to pause before I go a whole lot further and reevaluate. And I think what we sometimes don't do is pick up on the clues that we might be overextending our brain, our function, our fatigue factor is not, we're not taking care of ourselves. And we do know that symptoms can start early, but they aren't severe. It's only when it changes how you live your life that we wake up and go, uh-oh, I think this is, and we almost always go, oh, you know, this was going on for a while before we figured it out. Now that I look at it, this has been happening usually during crises or unusual situations or when I'm out of my usual and routine and habit. So often hospitalizations or surgeries or illnesses will kick it up a notch. And that's when we'll first notice the, whoa, what is going on here?
Somebody's asking, Jennifer's asking, is it possible for someone to have more than one kind of dementia, like a Lewy body and frontotemporal?
Yeah, it's actually, yes. And it's actually much more common than we thought. And the older you get, the more likely it is you will have more than one. You start with one dementia, and then it's, for some reason, for many people, it's like, oh, look, a party. And then another dementia jumps out and starts participating. So it's called a primary and then a secondary dementia. And what we can find is sometimes it's one set of symptoms that sort of predominate to start with, and then all of a sudden we start seeing some other symptoms that crop up. And on autopsy, we notice that they have a combination of dementias going on, which is actually becoming something that we're getting more comfortable with. It's not just one thing or another, it's a combo. And that turns out to be more frequently the case than after the age of 75 or so, than that it's just one, you end up with just one dementia active. Most common is vascular plus Alzheimer's, but you can certainly have mixes of others.
Okay, I'm going to ask, there's a doctor in the room who has asked 2 questions. Then I'm going to go to Kim on her iPhone and we'll come back to the chat. Dr. Addy asks, and excuse me if I've mispronounced that, if a head MRI scan shows small vessel ischemia without an HO cerebral stroke and age-related atrophy, but the patient scores repeatedly low on Addenbrook's AX, what is your diagnosis?
Well, I don't diagnose, but I would say that what we have is functional decline. And what I'd suspect is we have flow problems, even though they're not fully blocked and we have small vessel disease, but what we don't have is full blowouts or blockages. But what we're having is poor quality. And so when the person is really taking in fluids or fuels that aren't the optimal fuels and fluids, what we'll see is low performance, and then we have some little peaks, and then we go back into low performance. And so the challenge is functionally, they're functionally experiencing challenges that are consistent with a dementia. The problem is it's hard to say whether they've actually converted over to it yet, or it's just really interfering with their life. My rule of thumb is classically, we think somebody has MCI for approximately 2 years, but they've already got dementia as far as their world goes. They are needing a lot more support. And if we don't provide it fairly early on, what we end up doing is having somebody precipitate with more symptoms and have a difficult time. So I think it's a challenge because we want a nice, clean diagnostic category, and people are messy. And it turns out that people's capacity is more than just what we can see on some scan. Some people are incredibly smart and can cover things up for a while because they have extra, what we call reserve in the tank. And some people, they've lost reserve early on. So what we see is the best they can be. And so pretty quick, we see any kind of losses as dips. Yeah, because they don't have any reserve to pull on. And so that's where we often will notice peaks and troughs a lot more and really notice them and comment on them. How it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, they're either really fine or they're a mess. And it's like, because they can't have any middle of the road because that's just, they don't have that reserve to work with.
Dr. Addy also asked, how do you diagnose Charles Bonet syndrome in those with insight into their visual hallucinations?
Yeah.
People know what this is.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a tough one. And what I would say is it takes a really skillful clinician and time. We've also got to spend time, and we've got to look at baseline capacity and how things are shifting and when they shift and when they don't. And start looking curiously at when do people perform well and when do they not. This is where I think we want to do a snapshot and figure out what's going on, and what we need is a long play, video clip, both at different times of the day, but also in different care situations or interaction situations, and in different spaces and places, because all those variables in our brain can really elicit some very different phenomena that could help us figure out what is going on and what's the right support in which situations and what's the right care for this individual. And it may vary from morning to afternoon to evening dramatically. So how I support somebody in the morning time could be very, very different than evening care. And we often refer to that as the sundowning phenomenon. But it has a lot to do with brain chemistry and fatigue and support structures for individuals and habits of a lifetime. Because usually about 3 to 5 is a transition time for many of us. We leave work, we head home. We go from one place to another. There's transition for us. We take on different roles. We have different responsibilities. We are in a place of more comfort or more responsibility. And if that's not happening for me, I've got to get out of here. I got to go home. I've got kids. This is ridiculous. This is not my home. Why are you telling me that? This is bullshit? Let me out of here. I need to go. And so that sense of, whoa, what just happened? It's because there's sort of this clock in our brain that comes from hippocampal function that says it's been about this long since. And it's been about 8 or 9 hours, and I'm ready to go to the new place and do the job, but I've lost where I am in my life. And so you want to sort of go, you need to get out of here and you need to get going. This is not your home. This doesn't look a thing like your house. I am so sorry. I thought you were okay here. You are not okay here. Tell you what, let's get a coat and let's get out of here right now. Because what I need to do is go through a doorway or two, go to a different place or two, give the brain some different things to notice and pay attention to, give the hippocampus a break, and then say, tell you what, I need to check back in because I think, whether this is your place or not, I think this is where we're going to stay tonight. And I hate it because I should have checked with you. Well, fine, but I don't like it. I hear you. Listen, could you help me for a second? I need some help in the kitchen. I'm going to see what they have in the cabinets. Well, sure, I have something in the fridge. And it's like, oh, transition. Great. Just happened.
I don't know if it's possible for you to turn on your iPhone, turn on your camera. then I can drop you down here. If not, why don't you just go ahead and unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask your question. Kim, my phone.
Yeah.
There you
Okay,
are.
can you hear me? Oh,
Yes,
perfect.
yeah.
We have a gentleman at my workplace that sundowns badly, and he goes anywhere from, some days he's really good, but some days it's like starting at noon and then 2 o'clock, and he just and he becomes he wants to exit seek, and he tries to get out, and he gets fixated on he's lost his wallet, or he's got to go to the bank, or he's and we're having difficulties with keeping him safe because he's he can't walk any longer, but also with medications to try and settle him down. And like, what's your recommendations with when it comes to medication?
Okay, so let's back it up and let's say he has what he's expressing is unmet need. So what he's telling you somewhere between noon and 3 is he's tired of this place. He doesn't want to be here anymore. And his brain is coming up with reasons why he needs to leave. And so the reason is, I need to find my wallet. I need to go to work. So he's coming up with anything his brain can think of that would get him out of this place. So classically, people don't like the people they're around, what's happening around them, or where they are. Those are the 3 possibilities. They don't like that. So what I need to respond to is that statement, I don't want to be here anymore. And our challenge is we create spaces and we lock them. And we expect people to be okay, secured in a space that's not their space and it's not desirable. And none of us are comfortable in one location. Even in the winter, we get what's called cabin fever if you're trapped inside. And if we remember COVID, it was that, just gotta be out, and how awful it was when we weren't even allowed out to exercise in some spaces. So letting this guy go from space to space earlier in the day is going to reduce his need to do it later, because we aren't giving him any change of environment, change in people, and change in activity. I would also wonder what he's able to do, because one of the things to think about is, you know what, you're ready to go, get in the chair and I'll take you. Let's go. Let's blow this popsicle stand. Come with me. Now, do you want, I'm going to get some coffee or I'm going to get some tea. Which do you want? And we're going to get something to drink, something to eat. And we're going to go somewhere, we're going to eat, and we're going to drink, and we're going to do something. And you know what, we're going to be spending some time away. Now, the challenge is in the location you're at, I bet you're short-staffed too.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. And so one of our strategies is to try to use meds to compensate for skill. And I'm not being ugly, it's just the reality of anything we can give this guy is going to make his brain less confident and competent. And what he's already not liking is feeling incompetent and not confident. And so one of the challenges is often anti-anxiety drugs cause more anxiety because it makes you foggier, but it just makes me distressed because I know, no, I told you, no. And by the time we realize we need it, now we're trying to figure out how to give it. Antipsychotics suppress the entire system, which make it very, very difficult for people to move safely or do anything else safely. So what typically we might want to look at is, do we have enough fuel on board, and is it good quality fuel? Or is he been doing more along the line of glucose intake and less protein balanced with a complex carb sort of intake? Could we offer a smoothie? Could we get him off site a little bit and give him some things? I could use your help. How often do we say, I could use your help? Come here, I need you to do something. And what we tend to use is heavy work, pushing something with lots of sandbags in it that's really heavy and hard to push. I will sometimes use either a shopping cart or a mail delivery cart that I can load really low with bags of rice or bags of sand or bags of something that really make it heavy and hard to push. I'll ask people to help me move furniture, because a pushing motion puts pressure proprioceptive through the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. it actually grounds and organizes somebody. So giving somebody something to push or to move, I'll have people put cans away from me earlier on. I'll try to do some heavy work with people. I'll even have somebody get in a wheelchair and have somebody else push the wheelchair, because having something to hold on to when they move might be safer than walking freeform. But there are very few meds. You can try olfactory stimulation. You can try some essential oils that might be helpful. Some places in the world are using CBD or a combination of CBD plus THC, but you really want to talk with somebody and get comfortable with what kind of dementia might be going on here. And what are we doing to help the person get their needs met? Because I'm going to bet this was a pretty active human being who was in charge of a lot, and we robbed him of a lot of sense of authority and responsibility. And that's really what he's demanding. You are not the boss of me. Let me out.
What about hallucination?
Yeah, what are his hallucinations? They often, are you talking in general?
He looks in his room, and the room is full of mice, like
Yes.
his hospital. And things are just a mess. And that guy that cleaned the room should be fired. And
Okay, so you have, I would almost guarantee you on my, cross my heart and hope to die, but not right now. I would guarantee you have Lewy body active. So
That's
what
what
you
I-
have is a worsening of symptoms as the day goes on, and he is really lost in time, place, situation. He feels that people are out to get him and trying to hurt him, and he's got to get out of here. And he's in a flight. I mean, he's in full out flight. His primitive brain is wide open. So those are the kind of guys, if you can find somebody who can work with CBD and THC, that might be your better bet to try than some of the more traditional off-label use of some of the other meds, because they tend to have, for 50% of people with Lewy body, really significant and sometimes permanent detrimental impact. They can cause extrapyramidal side effects, and they can also cause toxicity and cause central nervous system dysfunction, including things like peristalsis, which means you can't move fluid and food through your system very well, and impactions become real problematic for folks. And then that's a whole nother pain side.
great.
Teepa, thank you so much.
You're
I can't
welcome.
answer that question. I think that would be something many people are struggling with around Sunday. We have some time. I'm going to have Constance. Constance, can you turn on your camera, possibly? Constance Sweeney, my former colleague. There you go. If you can't go, there you go. You can just go ahead and.
I can't, actually, I don't have a camera built in, and I didn't bring my camera today.
No
So
worries. And then Teepa, I have
So
one more
sorry.
group of questions I'm going to group together after Constance's that are
Okay.
all somewhat similar about
Okay.
family.
So
Go ahead.
The question is, you know, I have a family member my husband and I are taking care of. You know, we just go up there on the weekend, and his hallucinations are getting worse and worse. But he is one of those that's really bright and can hover over.
And he's committed to staying where he is the way he is. He doesn't want to get placed somewhere or have somebody do something.
Constance, I'm sorry. I think that you are mute again. Go ahead and unmute. Let's see, Constance. Sorry, that might have been me.
Okay.
There you
Yes,
go. You're
exactly. That is exactly the scenario. Yes,
Yeah.
he does not want to go anywhere, and we are hoping to keep him in his home, but I think he's covering stuff up because he's smart enough still.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at what point do we take him to get diagnosed, and what would that look?
Yeah, one of the tricky parts of getting somebody like that, I mean, I have several friends that have that condition, and they also are pretty smart people. And I've seen so many people with Lewy body be really smart and very artistic, and also very independent and very committed to their life. So I would say, I usually talk to my friends and I say, hey, listen, so you're seeing some stuff, yeah? And some of it seems pretty weird because you know it probably isn't true, but man, you sure do see it sometimes. Tell me how you're feeling about that. Is that really scary? Is it frustrating? Tell me more about how you're feeling about it, because it's very common with what I think might be going on with you for that to happen. And you can know it's not probably true, but it doesn't mean in that moment you're not devastated by what you're thinking or what you're seeing or what you feel like is happening. And I'd really like to be supportive. And I don't want to label anything, but I want to understand it more. And it's really being able to say, you know, I'm wondering if what's going on is you're visually seeing things and it's your brain is interpreting it in a really weird way. And when you go to think something seems to be interfering and causing you to have these thoughts that you know have got to be weird thoughts, but you can't not have them. And so you feel like you better hide them because you don't want to be put somewhere or committed for a psychiatric illness. And I do believe at your age, it's highly unlikely that you're just now developing schizophrenia. It's very weird to do that. So I think what we probably have is a brain change happening that we should maybe get looked at, because we don't want you getting medicines that would make you absolutely worse. And if we don't get this identified, that could easily happen. If you weren't able to control this once or twice, people might try meds that could be very risky for you. So I'd like us to get a handle on it so you can stay in control.
Well, that's good. Yeah, he thinks the melatonin he takes to help him sleep is causing it.
Yeah.
But now he just doesn't sleep very well.
Right.
And that's kind of
and that makes everything
yeah.
worse. Yeah. And so one of the things often is sleep deprivation really aggravates everything. And yet nighttime is such a scary time. The brain cannot settle at night and the distress state goes way up and fuel gets burned at an alarming rate. But people don't realize that. And so they're not refueling. And so they're depleting their stores and even burning their muscle structures because they need the fuel and they're burning up a lot of fuel. And so you can watch people with weight experience significant weight loss during this period because they don't trust anything either. They can't quite trust the food. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
You're welcome. Yeah, for sure.
So this question, and I do see the time and I know that you need to go to. There's a couple of questions that are constellating around. I'll read these and you can answer them if that makes sense. What is the beginning point of a conversation with caregivers or family who tend to blame the person rather than their disease?
Yeah.
Can you provide some suggestions on how to get family members to speak with a doctor about a cognitive assessment? And then when you have a recently diagnosed loved one with Alzheimer's, what would you say are the most supportive systems for caregivers just kind of to adjust to all of this? So really around family and.
Okay, yeah. So I usually come into it. So, hey, I'm going to use Susan just because she's here. Hey, Susan, it's Teepa, and I'm really curious. How are you feeling about things? Is it feeling great, in the middle, or really bad? How's it going for you right now?
Great, really great.
It's going great. Okay, so what would you say about your relationship with your mom? It's going great, or like this right now?
It's better now that she's dead. She died a little while ago, so now it's a good relationship.
Okay, now it's better. Okay, now that she's gone, it's better. Yeah, but it was sort of hard while she was here. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it was more what was happening with her or between you?
Oh, it was definitely her.
It was definitely her. Oh, wow. Okay. So you're really identifying her. Now, if you think back over your relationship, did it change or was it always really hard?
It changed when she was dying to be really good.
Ah, it changed when it was dying. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like things shifted. Tell me more about that. Okay, so this is the point where I've made the connection. I've established where she thinks she is, which I think is fine. But that's okay. She thinks she's telling me the truth. I think she's not fine. I think she still has a lot of things to think through and process. But I accepted her. But now that her mom is dead, it's better. Now, at no point did you see me go, did I just hear you right? Now that your mom's dead, it's better? I mean, what are you talking about? And there was no disbelief because I'm truly curious about why she's thinking and saying what she is. And then my phrase that I go to is, tell me more about it. Because once she starts giving me words, every time she gives me something, I offer something of what she just gave me as an appetizer, and then I'll move it forward a little bit. So it's really an opportunity for me to hear her, reflect to her what I thought I heard, and see if we can move forward with that. And so that's how I help people figure out where they are, where they want to be, what's okay about where they are, and what's miserable about where they are, and what we can choose to do about it. Because as long as she thinks it's all about her mom, it can be a real challenge. So there you go.
Good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And there are other questions, and I'm just sorry we're not going to be able to get to them today. We will send resources. There'll be a place where there is where you'll be able to be connected to Teepa's website. I recommend to everybody that you go and check that out. It's wonderful. So many resources. And Teepa, I just can't thank you enough. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Teepa. I'm going to turn off the recording right now. You'll get a little message that that's happening. And then I'm going to be able to stay on for a little bit, but Teepa needs to go because we are running a little bit late.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure being with everybody. I hope it was helpful.
Oh
So
my gosh,
thanks.
very,
Cool.
very helpful.
Take care.
Bye-bye.